Hello and welcome to Davies Forums podcast for Wednesday the 9th of March 2022. I'm Phil Hinton, I'm the editor and I'm your host for the evening, and also joining me for the hardware podcast is Ed Selley.
Hello all.
We've got Ian Collen.
Hello.
And of course Jules is here to talk calibration. Hi Jules.
Evening.
Right, obviously the movies podcast is also coming up later this evening, so stay tuned for that. Kaz and the lads will be here to talk movies. But what have we been up to since the live podcast, which thank you very much if you did watch at the time. So what have we been up to, Ed?
Not an enormous amount, because everything's getting extremely expensive. I mean, I've spent a lot of time doom scrolling Twitter, because, you know, that seems like the logical place to watch the world and unravel. I've done a fair quantity of work, and I'm trying to think if I've done anything. I bought another pair of trainers, obviously. Obviously. So that was pair 17 turned up there. So,
Adidas again, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I'm aware, as we've discussed before, I'm completely content that other brands of trainer exist. They're just not tend to be things that I buy. So that's what I've achieved. So I might do an Instagram team photo of the trainers at some point, I suppose, as well, because it's a long time since I last did that. So
and how are you getting on with fuel prices at the moment?
I haven't gone anywhere. So I've done 150 something miles in 3 weeks. So the last time I fueled up, it was 149.9 for super unleaded, and I will have to put fuel in on Thursday
in for a
evening.
shock.
Well, I'm not, because I'm not going anywhere. I mean, I'm quite content that I've got entirely the wrong vehicle to deal with what we're about to.
Yeah,
entail,
I'm not getting too smug at the minute, but getting rid of the Mustang when I did was seems like it was a good move.
I'm extremely low mileage, and I can, I'm very glad that I moved to a small town. I can walk to a supermarket. I can walk to most facilities. So one, it will make me less fat, and two, it will hopefully mean that I get to spend all my money on gas and electric instead. So we're a winner.
We are indeed. Jules, what have you been up to?
I've been doing a hell of a lot of miles to the contrary, schlepping all around the country. Lots of calibration work, several audio calibrations, mini DSPs, anthems. Today was a JVC N7, absolutely cracking picture from that. You look at it and you think, oh, can it get better than this? But the lasers do. And having fun with G1s and lots of other things.
Lovely.
Oh, and then getting depressed at the weekend with my football team. So,
yeah, I mean, I have to admit that there's a degree of masochism a mile wide in your persistence with that one. But yes, I feel for you in a way. So.
I think Ian's a bit that way as well.
I've got to point out, there is some solidarity here, completely unintentionally and coincidentally. But I've noticed Jules wearing the Norwich top, and I've got my Delia Smith T-shirt on.
Oh wow!
You can't quite see it. I'll drop
fantastic.
But it's my Let's Be Avenue T-shirt.
I'm not sure whether I should be booing that or not right now.
Honestly, I cannot watch that video sequence without wanting to try and crawl inside myself. It's just horrendous.
I think she was on TV saying she regretted it this week.
It's only taken her about. She certainly regretted it the following morning.
I'll be amazed you remember.
Many sheets to the wind at that point.
She likes a sherry.
But yeah, I share your pain.
Oh, terrible.
So, Ian, for those who didn't watch the live podcast, Ian's now taken over from Andy with the news. There's a little bit of role swapping going on there. Ian's long-time journalist, mainly gaming for a long time, Ian, but you're doing the news for us now on AV Forums.
Yes, I am, I did do home cinema a long time ago before I started doing video games, so I've got a bit of background there. But I've been playing a lot of video games lately. Most recently, Elden Ring, which I did a review for up on the website. That's just been killing me on an embarrassingly routine business.
You're not unusual there. It appears to be pretty savage. So
it is, but as long as you play it smart, you can get a long way. So I kind of did the obvious thing where early on I got a bit too bold and brave and walked into fights I had no chance of winning and got mauled. And then I got a bit better, built up my character and thought, I've made it now. Went back into some other fights. I just got mauled again, and it's like, okay, no, I need to go off and do some other things first. So it's been quite a humbling experience, but it's part of the process. So I don't mind it so much. It's just like normally video games will have like locked doors or invisible walls. These just have like 30-foot monsters that you need to kind of avoid for a decent amount of time. But I'm getting there.
It looks spectacular, and the range of people I see giving it praise who normally couldn't be persuaded to agree on anything other than tenets of like gravity and stuff like that. It does suggest it's a hell of a thing, but it does also suggest it's a massive and heroic time sink. So I'm probably going to leave it well alone.
Yeah, chances are that for each one of these podcasts to come for a short period of time, there's going to be, what have you been doing this week? Yeah, there's going to be still playing Elden Ring. still, got like 10 massive bosses left to go. So
I
very much a work in progress.
Found a website this week where you can play archived old games, and had all the Spectrum ones up there. So I'll have a crack at those, because back in the day, had a Spectrum and loved it, and loaded up The Hobbit. Do you remember the Hobbit game for the Spectrum? It was rubbish.
Well, I'm afraid this is not a medium like music or film. It's unless you're visiting like old arcade games where they were a fairly limited construct at the time, so that they haven't. I mean, I went to a vintage arcade with the boy not that long ago, and it was fine because it was just deeply nostalgic. I mean, just being there and the smells and the stickiness and all the rest of it was fantastic. But if you remember something being real, immersive, like you were there, the one inalienable truth is that if you revisit it 10, let alone 20 years later, it absolutely isn't.
Yeah, it hadn't aged. Oh, but it had aged massively. Yeah.
I mean, I remember the original Gran Turismo looking photographically real, and I mean, I know I was on some interesting things back then, but nevertheless, all evidence points to the contrary now. Although I'm going to avoid buying the new one because I also have to do work and earn money and stuff like that. So we'll leave that be.
It's why I don't get into games. They're just a time pit. You just disappear, don't you, Ian? Mm-hmm. And days just disappear. Anyway, I've actually been getting out, which is strange. But yeah, I'm getting back out again. And I was out over the weekend. We went down to York to see a Bowie tribute band at the Barbican. It was interesting. Really
did you go to the
interesting.
Railway Museum?
Yeah, yes, we did, Ed.
Excellent.
We spent the morning.
No visit to York should be complete without visiting.
Absolutely amazing. If you love trains, then it's the place to go. So yeah, we did that Sunday morning, and then went to the NY 500 on the way back, which is a bit of a motorist cafe type place, a lot of bikers, a lot of cars, that kind of thing. So we went along to see who was there, and there was lots of Mustangs and other nice bits of metal. So we did that on the way back as well. And this week I'm off to spend an evening with Bowers and Wilkins on Wednesday night, looking at their new soundbar. So, so another trip down to London on the train. So yeah, getting out and about. It's great getting out and about again. I've really missed it. So yeah, enjoying that. So that's what we've been up to since the last podcast. We've got lots to talk about tonight. So we'll be back in a sec with hardware.
If you'd like to support the AV Forums podcast on a regular basis, then why not become a patron? Head over to patreon.com/AV Forums to sign up. You can also make a one-off donation through the Super Chat or via streamlabs.com/AV Forums. All donations help us to improve the website and the podcasts. Thank you to all our supporters.
And welcome to new patron Paul Stewart. Paul, thank you very much for your support and joining Patreon. Welcome along. Hopefully you'll find your membership there useful. And if you haven't joined up, why not consider it? Patrons will get some exclusive sneak peeks and stuff coming up this year. We're still working on the software, but once it's up and running, you might be able to read some reviews and stuff earlier than normal members of the forum. So lots of interesting things. Go join up and have a look at that. It's patreon.com. Right, let's get stuck in. We've got some competitions on the hardware section, and Ed's going to tell us what you can win. There's some really nice prizes in here.
Yep, you can still win the Rotel A11 and CD11 Tribute. That's a bundle worth £998, not £1,000, £998. Absolutely staggering combo. Just a joy to listen to. It will make you start hunting CDs out in charity shops again. There is the Stone Refurb Winter Competition, to which you can win a £400 voucher. You can win Polk Monitor XT15 compact bookshelf loudspeakers worth £149. That's courtesy of our friends at Peter Tyson. And you can win £1,000 worth of spend that's the exact words, at MPB, and that's to be won by 3 people. So head on over to avforums.com/competitions to enter. All competitions are open to eligible AV Forums members resident in the UK except Phil. So get entering. There's some good stuff there.
Yeah, don't need to win any of that. I'd like to enter some of that, but then. So anyway, yeah, get yourself in there. Some great prizes, and we'll let you know who the winners are in due course. Right, so let's move on. We've got some news to get through. And luckily, we have Ian, who writes the news, here to tell us all about it. So, Ian, what are we going to talk about tonight?
Well, we've got quite a bit we could work through, so feel free to interrupt me at any time if I'm dragging on. But probably we should start with some European pricing has been announced for LG's 2022 lineup. Just to be clear from the off, these are from unofficial sources, even though they claim to come from within LG. So we can't 100% confirm that these are the prices, but it gives us a good idea of what we're going to be working with. And of course, being European prices, we're working with just basic UK currency conversion. So the UK prices I'll be giving out are going to be just basically me and Google rather than anything actually official. So there will be a little bit of leeway when it comes to specific UK pricing. But we're looking at primarily the new OLED range, and we've got some QNED pricing as well to kind of give us a bit of an indication of some ballpark figures there. For example, the OLED G2, which presumably most people would have read about since it was announced back at CES in January, so I won't go into too much of the specs. But in terms of pricing, that's starting at €2,500 for the 55-inch model, which translates to a little over £2,000 in UK money. That rises up to, what have we got, €9,000 for the 83-inch model. So that's around £7,500 in UK money. But again, that's just our conversion, not an actual UK price to expect. There's no price yet on the largest 97-inch model in that range, but that probably falls under the category of if you need to ask how much it is, then you probably can't afford it.
Yeah.
There's shipping, I think, is due to be starting this month with the 77-inch model in that range, but most of them is probably likely to follow in April, so don't expect all the rest of them to follow quite so quickly. Elsewhere, just again, without wanting to run through the entire list, but we've got the C2 range as well of OLED models from LG. That's starting with the 42-inch model at €1,650. We previously run a story on the website that John Lewis had leaked a pricing for that in the UK at £1,399. So again, still to be confirmed, but that's a pretty good ballpark figure, we'd imagine. And that range goes up to an 83-inch model, which is supposedly retailing in Europe for €7,500, which is about 6,200 of our UK pounds. Or again, you could find out the full range of prices on the website. We ran a story on this a couple of days ago, so you can get that. Also, more information on the B2 and the A2 ranges. But the bulk of these models should be available this month, excluding the G2, which is probably going to be next month. But there's going to be 1 or 2 screens as well that delayed until April, or maybe a little bit longer. But again, full details on the website to find out more.
Yeah, excellent. That news story is up there, so go have a look. As soon as prices are confirmed, we will let you know. I've got a meeting tomorrow morning with, and we're recording this Monday night, to go through the reviewers briefing. So as soon as we do the reviewers briefing, it normally means that the TVs are almost ready for review and going to be coming through. So yeah, that all kind of ties together. So hopefully we will be seeing new models soon, and of course as soon as we get them in our hands, we'll get testing them and letting you know just how they are. Obviously I was with them last week or the week before at an event down at their headquarters in the UK, and they were pre-production sets, but they're looking really, really good. The G2 in particular looks excellent with the new algorithm on the processing and so on. Nice and bright, lots of detail there. Even with the tone mapping pro turned off, the dynamic tone mapping pro turned off, it does look impressive. So yeah, we're looking forward to those. Right, Arcam have announced a new AVR and AV processor. Basically, if you saw the stuff last year, it's just got a new model number on the front and HDMI 2.1 as far as I'm aware. Ian, is that correct?
Yes, I believe so, amongst a lot of the other usual suspects.
Yep, so it's just a slight little update there. The good news is that they've had time to work on the software now. The beta model was the previous range. It's normally the way, isn't it? They were buggy. I had the AV40 and also I had the AV20 and the AV30, and all of them had the same issues. But they have now managed to get on top of those issues with firmware updates and so on. So hopefully these new models, when they do ship, they will be working nicely out of the box and playing well. And they are nice sounding processors and amplifiers. So it is a shame that the software was a little bit buggy to start with, but it looks like they've gotten around those teething problems. And Arcam stuff always sounds nice. They've always had a nice sound to them. Bowers and Wilkins, tell us about what I'm going to go and see on Wednesday night, Ian.
Yes, as you've already kind of given away a little bit, they have announced the new Panorama 3 soundbar, which people are old enough to remember the original, or the first two. First one came out in 2009, which basically introduced us to the range of what is essentially single speaker with no need for a subwoofer, like a self-integrated standalone unit. Panorama 2 came along in 2013, added HDMI amongst other things, and now the Panorama 3 coming along now, which is all about spatial awareness, spatial audio rather than spatial awareness. Well, it's probably self-aware. I don't know. It's very conscious.
Well, the way this year's going, it could become self-aware. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's the next big thing. You heard it. But spatial audio, particularly Dolby Atmos. It's their first Dolby Atmos enabled soundbar, so quite a big deal on that front. And I'm sure Phil will be able to tell us more about it once he's been to see it. But it's basically about the size of a 55-inch TV, so it can either fit nicely under your TV, or it comes with a wall mount this time as well, so you can mount it freely as well if you prefer.
Yeah. So it looks like it's going to be about 900 quid for this, according to the press release, which isn't too toppy in today's soundbar market. You got Apple AirPlay 2, adaptive Bluetooth support, haptics, Spotify Connect, Tidal, SoundCloud, Deezer. It looks like in terms of streaming wise,
it sounds like they may have corrected some of the more vexing limitations of the formation soundbar. So,
yes,
hopefully.
400 watts output, 40 watt distribution through each of the LCR drivers, tweeters, and Dolby units, ARC, ERC, HDMI port. Doesn't say whether that's 2.1 or not, but I don't think there's any need for it really to be 2.1. It's got ERC, so it looks like a really interesting. The only thing I'm a little bit concerned about is it doesn't look like there's a sub output. So it doesn't look like you can add a subwoofer at all. It looks like the subs are built into this 100mm subs. So it's going to be interesting to see just how weighty it is, because that tends to be my issue with soundbars. Without wireless subs or whatever, the bottom end doesn't seem to be quite as well-rounded as it could be, but this is Bowers & Wilkins. They've been doing this a long time, and I know that Ed's the type that doesn't go with the subwoofer philosophy anyway, so I think they might.
I don't have a problem with them. I just find, in terms of my requirements for subwoofers, you end up actually having to chase quite expensive and specialist bits of kit down, and it ends up being sufficiently expensive and complex that you might as well simply just go for a larger speaker or live without the bass. So, but
I'm all about the bass, no treble.
My views on this are niche, like most of my views, in fact. So that's by the by.
Yeah. So Panorama 3, I'm going to get to see that the day that this podcast goes out. So it's going to be the next podcast before we get into it in any detail. But there will be a video going up, probably on Thursday or Friday of this week. So keep your eyes peeled for that. We'll be interviewing everybody that's there as well from Bowers and getting their input as to what the product's all about and so on. And then hopefully a review sample should follow shortly after that. So we'll be able to tell you if it lives up to the hype and to the publicity and everything else that it's getting at the moment. So it looks like an interesting product there. So let's move over to audio, to hi-fi. A couple of stories to go through. Ed, Sennheiser IE 600. You've done the review. We launched that review at the same time as the press release hit.
We did. We were absolutely on it, weren't we? No, they sent a sample ahead of time. So yes, it wasn't a massive surprise that it was going to turn up. I mean, they'd done an IE 300 and an IE 900, and you didn't have to be, able to crack Enigma to work out that there was probably going to be a third model between those two. The interesting bit was that they're made out of amorphous zirconium, which not only sounds like a prog band, but it's a very cool material. It's been used in defense and medical and so on and so forth. It has extremely low deformity. It doesn't corrode. It also has really interesting heat transfer properties. So when you stick it into your ears when it's really cold, they heat up extremely quickly, which is an underrated thing when it comes to earphones. The review is up on the site, so I don't want to go over this in unnecessary detail. They are classic Sennheiser, single driver, single dynamic driver, and they're £600, but they are excellent. There's, the 900 is a better earphone, but it's not, there's not an enormous amount in it, and in some regards, the zirconium sort of angle is a cooler thing to tell your mates in the pub than it's diligently machined in Germany out of aluminium. So yes, I think it's an excellent product. It's extremely easy to live with. If you still need a pair of wired earphones, and I'm aware that that's an increasingly niche undertaking in its own right, it's very, very hard to fault them in any meaningful way. So the reviews up on the site. Very few people had anything to say about it, but the numbers seem to be quite good, so lots of people read it, which is nice. So yeah, and then at the other end of pricing, scale, and all sorts of other things. Although the price actually is I note not a part of the actual news story itself. Steinway Lyngdorf, new pair of speakers, the Model A. I was amused to note that Ian had dutifully transcribed that they are ideal for use on yachts, which is ironic considering what's going on with a certain group of people's yachts as we do this. But nevertheless, that probably gives you a clue as to the sort of price they're shooting for. All part of the same Steinway Lyngdorf design philosophy. So it's designed around the premise of room perfect being applied. They are fundamentally, the reason the price doesn't crop up is that you get the sense that they've been designed in such a way as Steinway Lyngdorf sees fit. Then they get to the end, then they see how much it costs. So, there's lots of impressive technology. Obviously, there's no shortage of competition from more traditional brands, but I do know that obviously Room Perfect as a construct has a huge following on AV forums. So if you were looking at building your end game multi-channel system, they will integrate with that with the other speakers. They've made a point of that being the case. Alternatively, you could have an entirely hassle-free 2-channel system. So I'm not going to make any rash promises about us reviewing anything like that, but they look technically interesting, and it's good to see. I have to say, by the standards of some of the Steinway Lyngdorf products, which I find extremely easy to admire, but aesthetically it wouldn't come within 500 miles of any property I owned, these are actually quite a nice looking thing as well. So all good. I'm
interested to see if we can get some into your hands, Ed, because I think we've reviewed a few of the products in the past, but in terms of 2-channel, I don't think we've gone that direction.
No, we haven't.
I reviewed something a little while back.
I'm not averse to it at all. It's hinged in the past that there is a concern that I'm some sort of vinyl waving Luddite, and that I won't appreciate what the technology is doing, which I think is possibly not the case. I would argue that what might be more of an issue is that obviously I'm in a room where it's been set up to behave without EQ, so maybe a room perfect device wouldn't necessarily achieve the same innate advantage.
I think you would find it still delivers.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
A highly impressive system, isn't it, Jules? I think you've calibrated a couple, haven't you?
Yeah. It's excellent, very, very good. I still think you need acoustic treatment, but there you go.
The thing that does interest me, because it's something that you have mentioned and other people have mentioned, is that unlike Dirac, it does seem to be able to take into account and not completely demolish the character of the speaker that's having that applied to it. Which, as I'm not a studio engineer, the speakers I listen to by preference do not have a ruler flat response. That's not exactly necessarily what they were set up to do. So essentially ironing out their character would not delight me. Getting them to behave better in room, I'm all for that. But removing what they are would be a little bit less satisfactory.
Room Perfect's definitely one of the better systems for that. Absolutely. Although Derek, if you do it the right way and spend your time, like Jules says, you still need treatment in the room. The room. These are not miracle machines that are suddenly going to make a huge difference. You still have to set things up correctly and add some treatment in there. But Room Perfect, if you just want something that you set up once and then leave alone, it's ideal for that because it does such a great job out the box. If you're more of a tweaker and you like to have different house curves and so on, and so, Dirac's the system for you, I think.
It's great.
It's more for the tweaker, as we would say. And of course, the interface is so much easier to use these days on Mac and PC. I mean, you can really dive deep and make lots of different changes. And the great thing is you can hear before and after, and you can also take out anything that you've done that suddenly affects things in a negative way as well, can't you, Jules? So
yeah, you can. And I mean, Anthem's got a great room correction system as well. But my preference would be for Dirac by a nod. Basically, because you can dive in there, as you say, and you can tweak, and you don't necessarily have to accept what it proposes. You can kind of do your own thing and preserve that sound. I mean, they're all three good systems there.
Yeah, good stuff. Right, so that's AV news out of the way. So let's look at some products that have been in for review very quickly. The one product that I'm going to talk about is Skyglass TV. The review is...
Have you had a carefully wrapped brick from Sky come through?
Not yet, and I'll wait and see if there's a horse's head when I wake up in the morning. I try to be fair, and I think I've been as fair as I can be and as balanced as I can be with the review. And as I say in the review, I mean, it's promising, the package. It's impressive what they can do with it. It's just unfortunate that they've based it on a TV that just doesn't cut it. It's too flawed a TV, and that's the problem with it. If you're buying or building a system into a TV, you need a really good platform to build on. This is I've reviewed a 65-inch. It performs the same way as a £600 65-inch TV would. Not a great deal of dynamic range, not a great deal of contrast. It's a VA panel. It's got QLED, so it's got quantum dot technology in there. In terms of colour, very good. Surprisingly, it has a really nice wide colour gamut performance. Not bang on, but in terms of saturation points and saturation tracking, it was there or thereabouts, which is impressive for a TV like that. But everything else just let it down. Like I say, poor dynamic range, poor contrast, lots of clouding on the panel, lots of dirty screen effect, and it was just a poor TV. Now, when you're talking about £600 TVs, and it's one of the reasons why we don't tend to cover them on AV forums, because we put a lot of effort into our TV reviews, and I just don't feel it's worth that time spending at that end of the market, because they're all much of a muchness. You buy a TV at £500, they're more or less going to perform the same. They're all built to price points. They all have their little flaws, whether it's IPS, whether it's VA, whether it's global dimming, local dimming. They're all going to have their little issues, and frustrating as it was, they've got a good idea. They just need a better platform to build onto it. At the moment, I would still highly recommend you go and find yourself a £1,000 TV, because that's how much this 65-inch was. Maybe go down a screen size, go at 55 inches. You can pick up OLED, much better TV. Much better picture quality. If you have to have Sky, get yourself a Q box, and if you have to have a soundbar, you can pick up a soundbar that'll perform exactly the same as the soundbar on this TV for about £100. So there are better options. I much prefer Sky Q as a system. I've had Q for a while. I found Glass frustrating. They changed it ever so much that it just became frustrating to use. I didn't like the way the UI was implemented. I didn't like the way it was relying on third-party apps for a lot of the content when it's a Sky product. I found that strange. Also, you can't record on it. So
it is an odd one.
That's weird.
Yeah, so you use a button called Playlist. And when you highlight a program and click Playlist, what it does is it then amalgamates all the information on that, and it'll give you a list of the episodes and so on. What I found was that some content, if it was Sky content, you could find the episodes, click download, and it would download and play it on demand for you. Where it was maybe 6 or 7 seasons of, say, something like Friends, for example, that's split amongst Comedy Central and Netflix and other providers, sometimes the episode that was listed, when you clicked on it, it wouldn't play it because it couldn't find it or it wasn't accessible. So, no, I much prefer to have a recording and the way that Sky Q does it. So it's frustrating. The review's up there. I scored it at 5 out of 10. It is average. It's an average TV. All the other stuff might be clever, but if the TV's not up to it, then it kind of wrecks the experience. Now, it has been pointed out that maybe members of the public out there who are not AV enthusiasts would be more inclined to live with a set like this, and that maybe is the case. In those terms, I think it's a little bit overpriced. The 65 inches, £1,048, and that's before your subscription on top. And obviously, you basically with this TV, you need your subscription, and you need the HD and the 4K subscription to get the most out of it. The soundbar is pretty decent on there, but like I say, it starts racking up the costs quite quickly. Now, another thing that would appeal to people is that you can, like a phone contract, choose your TV, and it's just one payment. So you get your interest-free credit over 2 years to pay back on the TV and so on. But it all starts racking up. So if you're looking at the 65-inch TV, you're looking at, let me just quickly find it. It's £1,049 to purchase outright. The other option is £42 a month over 24 months or £21 a month over 48 months. That's on top of your Sky subscription. So it gets pricey quite quickly. So yeah, it's a good idea. I'm all for convergence and bringing things together if it makes sense and it makes it easier for the consumer. The problem is that the TV was poor. So the review's up there. If you want to read a little bit more, then head over to AV Forums and read that. And if you want to leave us your comments and what you think, you can do that on the podcast thread. You can do it on YouTube in the comments down below, or you can do it on the review, on the thread with the review, and just leave us your comments, what you think on that one. Right, we're going to Ed, upcoming review from you, hi-fi wise, what we're looking at.
Well, I mean, there's a few, but the one that I'm singling out, because it's an unexpectedly brilliant thing, is the Cyrus i9 XR. Now, we covered the i7 XR last year. I did actually end up saying it was the unluckiest product of last year, because under any normal circumstances it would have bagged an Editor's Choice Award, but actually it wound up competing against the best thing I tested all year. The i9 is a bit of a weird one because it has exactly the same connections, ins and outs. It looks exactly the same, and it then costs about £800 more. And the difference is solely that it has a bigger power supply and produces more power. And that doesn't sound like a tremendously promising sort of recipe for success, but it's absolutely outstanding. Easily the best Cyrus integration amplifier I've ever tested. And I mean, the full review will go into why I reached these conclusions. It is within spitting distance of Rager and Names integrated amplifiers, despite costing less and having digital inputs. That's how good it is. So that's coming up. There's an integration amplifier from Technics. There's an integration amplifier from Rotel. For whatever reason, it's integrated amplifier season at the moment. And I cannot actually remember what other things I've tested, but there's lots of lovely, lovely things. And also sat in my hallway, it'll be interesting to compare notes with the Panorama soundbar, because sat in my hallway, Phil, is a Sonus Faber Omnia, which is not a soundbar.
No, it looks interesting, though.
But it's perfectly capable of behaving kind of like one. And then it does all sorts of musical things as well. And it's made by Sonus Faber, so it's very pretty. So I will be extracting that from its box shortly. Although actually, what I'm actually going to do, I'll make no bones about this, I'm going to drag it all the way down to Hampshire this weekend because my father, amongst other things, has a name Muso 2, which I don't have. So I'm going to annoy him by running a few side-by-side tests, and then I'll drag it back up to Milton Keynes and dot the I's and cross the T's and so on and so forth from there. So that's coming through. Oh yes, there's an exclusive speaker review, but that's not going to come out until April because we have to wait for the rest of the speakers to actually arrive and be available for you to buy. And I can't give too much away, but it's a very curious little device indeed. But if you use it in the way that the manufacturer intends for you to use it, it is capable of astonishing things. So that's what's coming up from me.
Okay, excellent. Right, so let's move on to our calibration subject this week. We've been doing this for a little while now. Jules has been waiting patiently to tell us all about this week's subject. So, Jules, we're going to start at the beginning, basically, and work our way out and explain to people why things are done a certain way and why they should consider calibration and so on. So what is it you want to talk about this week?
Well, as you say, it's quite a simple concept. I call it farm to fork. Why should you calibrate? Well, because all the content you see has been produced on calibrated monitors. If you go to a standard studio, you'll find dozens of monitors there, and they all have to be set up to a particular standard, and to ensure consistency of image right from the very beginning, from conception through to the end goal, which is to get it to your display. And I don't know where we would be if we didn't have those standards and they weren't enforced. If you want to produce content for Netflix, BBC, whatever, you have to conform to those standards. You have to be working on a calibrated display. The director of photography, the colorists, everybody has to be able to trust what their eyes are seeing, and to be able to switch from one monitor to another and to be able to see the same thing. So when we go, I've just had the call from a wee Scottish production again to go up there and to calibrate on set, and they'll be wanting all of their monitors calibrated properly with a spectroradiometer, colorimeter, all the software to the standards that are specified by the industry. And otherwise, it'll be a right dog's dinner, wouldn't it?
Well, it would. If you think of something like James Cameron's Avatar, and you think about how many people actually work on that production.
Yeah.
So if you've got all your special effects and you've got all your artists and everybody else working on it, and all the monitors were just set to their personal preference and what they thought looked good, I think you'd have a few shades of blue by the time you got to the final.
You definitely would.
Final
at least 50.
Yeah. So the idea is, and this is why I think people misunderstand calibration, because they say, well, I'm not going to use filmmaker mode on my TV. I'm going to get my TV calibrated. You're talking about the same thing. If all the TVs look the same, how would I pick the best one? Well, that's why your TV has standard mode and vivid mode and all the rest of it, because the point of calibration is for everything to look the same, and the reason why it should look the same is because that's how the director shot it, that's how it was put together, that's how it was graded, and this is how it's being delivered. Now, that's not to say that within that envelope of the standards that the colorist can't add more pink to somebody's skin tones and orange shoes and whatever. They still have a lot of artistic expression within that envelope. And I think this is what people misunderstand. They don't realise that there is this envelope that says you can't go over this and you can't go over that, but anything inside that envelope you can do. And as long as your TV is set to that same envelope, that it can't exceed certain points, and red should look this, and you're going to see exactly how it should look. So if it's Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds, it's completely desaturated and over the top and everything's clipped out, it was still shot in that envelope. And as long as your TV's set to that envelope, you're going to see it as it's intended to be seen. As soon as you start adding personal preference on top of that and saying, well, I think filmmaker mode looks green or yellow or it's dull or whatever, you're completely changing the content, you're completely changing the way things are seen. So to get back to your point, Jules, back to the studio, back to where it all begins.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I calibrate for colorists, producing content for all these big streaming giants like Netflix, and they have to have their display calibrated, and there are specifications that run throughout the whole industry if they want to submit their content. Not just that, also things to do with their room as well, their viewing environment. Netflix specify according to the SMPTE regulations that you should have a surround light level of 5 nits, and you should be a certain distance from your screen, that it should be illuminated, so they're not sitting in black rooms, and it's not totally dark. I mean, they are dark rooms, but there is that light, the bias light behind the display, and it's specified to be D65, not disco. It's not like Close Encounters. It's these lights that you see. So they're calibrated bias lights to a specific white point and a specific light output as well, and also making sure that the background that is you've not got red walls. So when the bias light's on, it's not a red wall, because that shifts your perception of color. So there'll be walls in that studio according to a certain exactly the same color temperature, and you can get the color swatches. It doesn't have to be black, but it has to be a certain color temperature as well, so that everything is matched up within that. So that the colorists' eyes are not being distorted when they're working on the content. So it is it's a highly regulated environment, and when we don't turn up and just dial it in by eye, or I don't turn up, calibrators don't turn up to those studios with a bunch of settings and punch them in from one I did yesterday. That doesn't happen.
It's an important point you make there, because if you hire a professional calibrator, somebody who says they are a professional calibrator, and they turn up and they might have all the gear and so on, and set the gear up, but then think, oh, that doesn't look right, and take the remote and then set it by eye, that calibrator doesn't know what they're doing. They're not setting that TV up to the standards. And I have heard a number of stories of professional calibrators in this country doing that. If your calibrator does that, ask them what they're doing and why they're not setting to the standards.
Exactly, because the very definition of the word calibrate, and it is used loosely on forums, because perhaps, you can't blame people, they're not in the professional game, but to calibrate literally means to adjust to a known or set standard. In this case, the standards, SMPTE and other regulatory bodies that have laid down. You cannot do that by eye. I wouldn't trust my own eyes to do that. I have my instrumentation for that purpose, and they're far more sensitive than my own eyes are. And your brain's a funny thing. It does weird things at times in relation to all sorts of stimuli. So we have to trust our instrumentation.
Yeah, excellent. So we're starting right at the beginning. We're starting at the studio. This is where Jules has a lot of experience. And, calibration is there for a reason. We don't just make this up, and when we put YouTube videos out saying set your TV to filmmaker mode, it's not because it's the dullest mode and these standards have been around from 1990 or whatever, and the 30-year-old, and why should we stick them? You stick them if you want to see content as it's supposed to be seen. These standards do exist, and it goes all the way back to the camera that's being filmed, and that camera still works in that envelope. Everything is captured within that envelope. And it's the same all the way through, and if you want to see it at the end of the day as it's supposed to be seen and as it's been worked on, then that's what you're aiming for with calibration. So thanks, Jules, for your input this week on that. It is appreciated. Of course, we're going to cover different subjects every week, and if there's something in particular with calibration that you're not sure of or you don't really understand and you want us to go into it in some kind of depth, then of course leave us a note in the thread. I know that Jules reads the forums when he's not too busy and catching up on things, so if there's anything that pops up, then we'll make a note of it and we'll come back to it in the next podcast, and we'll try and discuss that. But for the next few weeks, we're going to take you on the journey from the source when it's first captured all the way through to what a calibrator should be doing when they come to your house, when you pay for their services and so on. So thanks very much for that, Jules. Right, so that kind of wraps up the hardware section of the podcast for this week. We just need to go and get Ed's album playlist and so on, so we'll be back in a sec. Right, so we've caught up with Ed, and we're going to find out what his playlist, vinyl and album of the week is. So what are we talking about this week, Ed?
Well, first of all, I'm going to disappoint you. I don't have a playlist of the week for this time round. I just haven't actually spent that much time digging around with the curated content section. So apologies if I find something excellent in the next couple of days. I'll slam it into the comment section. Album and vinyl are different this week. Album of the week actually came out at the end of February, but it's a New York-based synth band. Which might sound mildly alarming, but bear with me, called VHS Collection. So you can probably get a handle on the fact that there's a certain retro element to this. Never terribly prolific. They've done 4 albums in a whisker over 10 years, I think. But they released this album. It's called Night Drive. And I really like it. Obviously you can't drive anywhere at the moment because fuel's too expensive, but it's good fun to sit at home and listen to. It's on all the major streaming services, sometimes in high res. There will be physical releases, but they don't appear to be out yet. So just give that a listen, see what you think. Vinyl is out, and the reason why it's the vinyl release, one, I think it's a good album. It deserves a mention in itself, but it's Stereophonics, and Christ knows how to pronounce this one, Uchiha, with an exclamation mark. This is also on all the major streaming services, and it's, in this regard, it's better than some Stereophonics albums of old. The digital version of it sounds all right. The feedback is that the vinyl version, which is available in a lovely yellow, sounds quite a bit better, which has often been the case with Stereophonics albums, which is why Performance and Cocktails, if you try and buy a copy of that on vinyl, will cost you a fortune. This won't cost you a fortune. It's still readily available. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It doesn't break any new ground. It sounds exactly like the Stereophonics used to, but I used to enjoy how they sounded. So I think it's a perfectly enjoyable way to spend some time, and you get a vivid yellow record to enjoy at the same time. So those are my recommendations. Feel free to disagree with them vehemently in the comments section.
Well, it's always interesting, Ed. Thank you very much for that. Okay, you don't have a playlist for this week, but I'm going to put you on the spot. Any playlists that you've listened to previously that you want to push again because they were just so good?
If you are a Qobuz subscriber, and I'm aware it's not the majority service by any stretch of the imagination for users, but their label story playlists, where they assemble a playlist from a specific record label, those are absolutely fabulous. Insofar as often if you're going in cold to a label you have no experience of, it can be a tremendous learning experience. If it's a label that you are familiar with, it will bring artists to your attention that you maybe not been aware of. So I highlighted the Daptone one in a podcast last year, but they tend to turn out at least 2 a month, and they are always worth checking out if you are a Qobuz subscriber. I'd also say that I've recently for another publication, I've done a group test of streaming services. If you are still umming and ahhing about whether you're going to move away from Spotify and look at a lossless service, I would say that both Deezer and Tidal, their learning algorithms have made serious progress in the last couple of months. I would say that they are on the cusp of being as decent at finding you new content that's going to appeal to you as Spotify is, and they're going to do that either losslessly with Deezer or with MQA-based high-res for Tidal. So that's something to bear in mind as well. They are starting to generate some genuinely excellent curated content, and it's yet another erosion to Spotify's market share. So worth a look.
Okay, thanks for that, Ed. That's his music choices this week. Stay tuned, because the movies team are up next.
If you enjoy the podcast on YouTube, then please like and subscribe. If you're listening to the audio version, then please leave us a rating on your podcast app. We invite you to email questions and feedback to podcast@avforums.com and join in with this episode's discussion thread in the podcasts forum at AV Forums.
Hello and welcome to the AV Forums Movies Podcast. And with me tonight, I have Tom Davies. I was going to call you Batman, but
hello.
And Mark Costello.
But I'm Batman.
Yeah, you can't do it. You haven't got the background for it.
No, I know.
And I'm Kaz Man. So yes, we're here for another fun-packed night of talking two-thirds.
Talk.
Yeah, 2/3 Batman and 1/3 Mark. And that's
We're just talking about Mark.
Why?
Mark's
Yeah.
personal life.
Why? I don't have strange views of TV programs that people really love this week.
No,
Ooh, save it for the podcast.
Yes.
this is the podcast.
That's what I'm doing.
We're gonna talk Batman, and we're gonna talk sequel news, and we're gonna talk some 4K discs and some controversial first episodes of TV shows that show that Tom just isn't a Star
He hates
Trek fan.
Trek.
Yeah, he does. He's more of a fan of Boba Fett.
I have no idea what anyone's talking about.
Yes, exactly. First, though, competitions. Mark, do you fancy blasting through this really short list of competitions?
Always. Thanks, Kaz. Tonight, well, not just tonight, for the next few weeks, I imagine, you can win Criterion's March titles on Blu-ray, Caveat on Blu-ray, Studio Canal's The Gentle Gunman on Blu-ray, and Dazzler's release of the BBC TV drama The Responder, also on Blu-ray. So head over to avforums.com/competition to enter. All competitions are open to eligible AVF Forum members resident in the UK.
Nice. And do we have any winners, Tom?
We've got a few, yeah. We've got the patron George L78, who won a copy of Cobra Kai Season 3 on Blu-ray. I've not seen any of Cobra Kai. Should I catch up with that?
You'd love it, Tom. You'd give it 4.
Okay.
Nostalgia.
Dataless won Last Night in Soho on 4K. Good for you. AMC won a copy of Escape from Pretoria on Blu-ray. That's quite a good movie as well. Paul M24 won a copy of the June Blu-ray merch bundle. So you got all sorts, like drinks bottle, a hat. I'm very jealous of the hat. Patron Togusa won a copy of Father Brown Series 9 on Blu-ray. And Grumpy Graham 61 won a copy of Max Reload and the Nether Blasters.
That's a sentence and a half.
If I didn't know better, I would have said that Kaz had made that up. But it is a real film. So enjoy watching that.
It's a real thing. Yeah.
It's a real thing.
Nice.
I'm Tom Davies.
That's how I'm going to sign off tonight.
And command gag there.
Uh-huh.
Let's do some movie news. We have some movie news. Do we have some movie news?
There's plenty.
No.
Okay.
No news.
Mark says no.
No
Moving on.
news.
No news.
Well, there is.
Orient Express did blisteringly well, and then Death on the Nile didn't, but they've greenlit a third Poirot. So we get to understand how the moustache grew.
I was going to say there's a lot more body parts that we need Ken Branagh to do origin stories of.
Yeah.
So not
Hey.
surprised.
That sounds really dodgy. We'll talk about Frankenstein later.
Nice.
But yes, but yeah, he's getting a third shot as Poirot. I figured that this must be a safe bet for them because I know they spend too much money on movies which don't really warrant that much money, but they could probably turn in a third one for a reasonable budget and get a good return on it.
Do we know what Poirot story they're covering?
Death on the Orient Express through the Nile.
Excellent.
I mean, yes. I mean,
Evil Under the Sun, something like that.
Yeah.
Is that Poirot? Maybe
I
not.
don't.
I enjoyed for what it was. I mean, my review probably was a bit negative, really. I mean, I stand by the 6 score, but it's easy entertainment, and I think what some of the overwhelming comments in the thread about it were exactly that. It's easy. You just go along, you let it wash over you. It's effortless entertainment, but it's entertainment, that you could take the entire family to, old to young. So I'm not surprised that it's getting a third one. I would be surprised if it got a theatrical release.
Ooh, controversial.
I don't think it will. I think it'll go straight to a streaming platform of choice.
Interesting.
Amazon. My money's on Amazon. That seems like an Amazon brand.
My money's on theatrical. I think that they like their theatrical Poirot releases. I think if it was going to do it, was going to do it with Nile. But we'll see. We'll see who's cast. Yeah, because that'll make a difference as well.
Everyone who has ever met Ken Branagh.
Not Army Hammer. I'd hazard a guess.
Yeah, yep.
That's a shame.
Yes. And a couple of years ago, maybe a little bit longer, Will Smith said he's not going to do a sequel to I Am Legend. I mean,
Well,
other than for obvious reasons. Yes.
Yeah.
But,
Can we go into spoilers for a very old movie?
well, we can talk about the fact that there are two cuts, and one ends in a way that there
Yes.
could be a sequel, and one ends in a way that there couldn't.
There
Because
could not
Very
possibly
well
be a sequel.
navigated there,
Well, no,
Kaz.
there could be a sequel, just not involving Will Smith.
Yes, exactly. So this is the one to the other ending
Mhm.
where there could be a sequel. Anyway, he said, "I don't do sequels." I mean, I don't know whether he's seen Bad Boys 2 and 3, but he said, I'm not interested. I don't do sequels. And then he tweeted a picture of I Am Legend, like the landscape of I Am Legend, and apparently he's back doing I Am Legend 2 with Michael B. Jordan, because I guess Will Smith doesn't quite command these movies anymore, so he needs a partner in crime.
I don't know. I think if he wanted to, I mean, okay, Gemini Man was not like a huge thing, really. That didn't go down the way everyone expected it to, or the way that he wanted it to, I would guess. But I still think he's got star power. Like, he's still, but I guess maybe only in the sense of he's going for a bit more worthy these days,
Yes.
isn't he?
I was-
Generally.
Yeah, King Richard did his cachet, I think, no hums, and was, reminded everyone that he always was a good actor in amongst all his, bombast and bass stuff and things like that. But this, I just don't get this at all. I really don't get this. I mean, where do you take the story? I mean, why is he coming? Why is anyone green lighting this? All the scripts that must be out there. Why? News doesn't often make me mad, but this does, because
Makes you
just
mad?
why?
Oh,
Why this
hopefully.
one?
Hopefully, it opens the floodgates to a whole load of Will Smith sequels. So we could have like 2 Pursuit, 2 Happiness. We could have £8.
Gemini Brothers.
Yeah,
Just-
this is it. This is the start of Will Smith's sequel period.
Just
I Am
no.
Still Legend. I mean,
Just no.
I watched it the other day and I enjoyed it.
Don't get me wrong, I very much enjoy it, but even both cuts, let's be honest, I enjoy it, but of all the stories that had a very specific ending,
Yes.
now it's just like, have a word, because
Yes.
all it'll be now will be a generic Contagion / zombie movie. Anything that had to do with the original story by
Richard
Matheson, and anything to do with that will have gone.
Yeah.
There's nothing left for it now. There's nothing left for it. And while I think the first film, had some interesting notions about the antagonist, shall we say, well, certainly in one of the cuts, this now, I just cannot see a decent narrative to come out of this that doesn't turn it into generic Netflix fodder. And
generic studio sci-fi. And speaking of generic studio sci-fi, hey,
did I cross it in for Tom to head home there?
you really did. That was
the film that's going to happen about as much as Tarantino's Star Trek.
Yeah, we have a new Alien movie on the way.
We really don't.
Headed straight for Hulu, which is like, okay. And who's in charge? Fede Alvarez.
Yeah, director.
He is a man with a checkered career, right?
That's putting it mildly, Tom. Yes. If you'd asked me about this a year ago, I'd have been much more excited.
Yeah.
But then I made the mistake of seeing Don't Breathe 2. And now his name makes me want to retch.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be interesting. I wonder whether the cynical me thinks Ridley Scott is quite happy with giving it to someone who could turn in a really bad job, because then people stop complaining about Ridley Scott alien movies. But
he's supposedly still on board to produce, right?
Yeah, allegedly, but that's going to get shunted to executive producer.
Fair enough. Because there was similar fanfare around Covenant, is that right?
Yeah.
Ridley Scott is back. No, that yeah.
No, unfortunately, it wasn't Aliens Ridley Scott is back. It was Prometheus's Ridley Scott is back. But I just want to know, how does this fit in with the new Hulu TV show? That I mean, is it going to fit in? Because if it doesn't, it's just another mess that shows that there's no coherent structure, focus, thought, anything here. And again, it's another one where they're cashing in on a name. You know, I'm prepared to cut praise some slack, because at least it looks like it's trying to do something interesting with the Predator franchise. Well, it looks like it is, remains to be seen, but I don't know.
Yes,
More bad news this week.
What more? Well, let's do some good news.
Okay. Oh, please do.
Okay, so how about this? Robert Downey Jr.
Yes.
Okay. Shane Black.
Hell yes.
Richard Starks Parker.
Cautious yes.
Oh, come on, it's a pretty good combo.
Well,
I am super on board with this. Robert Downey Jr. went from Iron Man to Doolittle in more ways than one, and you know, Shane Black did the
Predator.
Yeah, I know. I just don't even want to say the
Predator.
word.
You can't escape it.
Okay, he did. And the last time we saw Richard Starks Parker using the name Parker was in Parker.
The State.
Jason Statham playing Jason Statham.
Yeah, but you know, I thought that was quite a solid little film. That I thought that was quite nifty
for a Jason Statham film, not for a Richard Starks Parker film, who has been a character who's been played by Lee Marvin, Robert Duvall, Jim Brown, Mel Gibson, and Statham. I'm super on board with Downey Jr. coming back and doing this.
To be fair, it's got all the right names in that one sentence. Downey Jr., Shane Black, Richard Starks Parker. Yeah, he'll get a watch. So yes. Good news.
It is good news, but back to bad news. Anyone excited for Morbius? Anyone here? No, good. So let's move on to Batman. I saw the Morbius trailer. I mean, Tom saw the Morbius trailer.
We've
they showed
all
the Morbius
seen the
trailer.
Morbius
Well,
trailer.
okay, but they showed it extra big before Batman. They were like, "You're in for 3 hours of Batman. Let's show you some bad trailers for films that you don't want to see because you're stuck here."
They were so desperate to sell the line that it was like the next superhero phenomenon, and it was deeply embarrassing to watch the trailer.
It was really, yeah, it was. Yes, it was. It's pretty bad.
But we're not.
You never know.
Sorry, go on, Mark.
I was just going to say, you never know. It looks complete balderdash, but who knows?
Yeah, we do kind of know.
Yeah.
It's kind of it has a moment in it that makes you wish you were watching a Venom movie.
Wow,
which is an achievement for a trailer of any ilk. But it's got one brief moment where you're going, yeah, I could watch Venom instead. You know, it's like, yeah. So I mean, you're right. Maybe they put all the worst stuff in the trailer, and they were like, they're going to just blow your mind for the people who just walked past that trailer and still went and saw it.
I'm interested to see how they're tying it in to the rest of the Sony / Marvel thing that's going on.
End credit. There'll be nothing. It'll be an end credit stinger, and that's it.
Well, there is it could be. The trailer contains an actor from a Spider-Man movie. I'm not
Michael Keaton.
The trailer.
Yes.
But yeah. So is it the same character, or is it just the same actor, or is it this world, or is it that world? So I'm really looking forward to reading on Wikipedia like how it fits in.
I was just saying, I'm waiting for the cut where they literally overdub Jared Leto's entire vocal performance with someone doing an impression of him from House of Gucci. Then I would watch it.
The best thing about Morbius is that when they brought him in for the 1990s Spider-Man animated series, they were too worried that blood sucking was a little bit much for a kid's cartoon on a Saturday morning. So instead that they had Morbius craving plasma, which he sucked out through his hands.
Oh, nice.
Would rather watch that. Would rather watch that one.
Yeah. It was inventive and utterly nuts.
That sounds pretty good. So we saw the Morbius trailer, or at least Tom and me saw the Morbius trailer before the Batman, and yes. So let's talk a bit about the Batman without spoiling it for anyone.
Oh shucks, that's a shame.
There'll be bats in it. There'll be men in it. That's it.
Yes, both. Well, no. Were there any bats?
Yeah, briefly there were bats.
There were bats.
One occasion of bats.
Okay. Well,
I was going to say, there better be bats. You'll be telling me there's no slow motion pearls falling down a dark alleyway next.
Nope.
Good God. And then I'm out. It's not a Batman film without that.
It's not a Batman film. It's the Batman.
The Batman.
Film.
So go on. Should I, who has not yet seen it, go and see this new Batman film?
100%. It is a good
Nice.
Batman film. It is not the best Batman film, not by any stretch of the imagination. There's a lot more love out there for The Dark Knight, quite rightly. There's a lot more love out there for Batman 89, quite rightly. But it sits very comfortably in the upper half of Batman movies. It
excellent.
is for those who don't know, this is Batman in the second year of him being Batman. But rather than fighting any kind of, overpowered supervillain, it is a detective story. This is Batman brought on as a consulting detective in order to try and catch a serial killer who calls himself the Riddler. And it just works. The stripped back premise is great. And it does a lot of favors for the movie. I'm going to tear apart my own review a little bit in saying I compared it, as a lot of people have compared it, to Seven and Zodiac, but it is not as clever as either of those films. It takes elements of tone and atmosphere, and in some instances cinematography, from those movies. But
yeah, it's not unreasonable to say it's kind of Seven light.
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
I mean, which is good for a Batman movie.
Yeah.
But if you were expecting it to be actual Seven, then maybe some of it's a bit convoluted and a bit contrived, and also a little bit safe, because
it's
it has
funny
to be
that
for a Batman
it's true. It's funny that in either Seven or Zodiac there is like a cryptic clue provided to the people investigating the case, and they agonize over it and they theorize over it and they research. In the Batman, a cryptic clue is presented to the Batman and he solves it immediately.
Yeah, but he's Batman. What on earth do you expect? He's the world's greatest detective, Tom. Come on.
He really earns that in this.
To be fair, that is in the comics. I remember some of my favorite Riddler comics. He gets a puzzle from the Riddler, which as a reader, you're reading it and going, what? That doesn't make any sense. And he'll go, yeah, it's that. And you'll think, no one could have jumped to that conclusion whatsoever. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
In a way, that's quite nice, because it sort of harks back to a Sherlock Holmes style of detecting, where as a reader or as a member of the audience, you could not possibly work these things out. But he can work it out immediately.
He's memorized all the train times and has figured out
so the one thing I want to know now, Tom, after you've set that up really nicely for me, is he's brought on as the consulting detective, if you like. Do we ever find out what his day rates are? Because frankly, that's what I'm more interested in. What is the day rate for a consulting superhero?
No, he's not in it for the money.
I don't think. Do you know what? I don't think he needs the money, Mark. I just have that hunch.
But no one knows he's Bruce Wayne. He doesn't have to put Bruce Wayne on his invoice, that he gives to Jim at the end of it. He could just put B Man Esquire.
Yeah, Batman services rendered. Please pay Wayne Enterprises.
Batcave Gotham. That's all he needs to put on it. The taxman ain't going to worry about it.
The thing to super recommend the new Batman movie is not the plot, although the plot is fun and it is engaging and it is a different type of Batman movie in that it really does focus on the detective work over punching people.
Mm-hmm.
The best thing about it, and I didn't call him out specifically in my review, but it's Greg Fraser, who's the cinematographer, who has done an amazing job in creating a new cinematic language of Batman. I'm not really sure.
Nice.
Yeah, it's incredible. When you think of all of the Batman images from cinema, it is about the Dark Knight, the lone figure, the brooding, all of that stuff. To an extent as well, the Batmobile, that almost entirely goes out the window. Not completely, but almost entirely goes out the window for the Batman. And all of the new Batman iconography is Batman and someone. It is all to do with Batman saving people, Batman with the thugs, Batman with Catwoman. And it's all about his presence as a hero. I think this is probably the most heroic I have ever seen Batman in a film. Yeah.
Good.
It's not all
sold
sunshine
it
and
to me,
roses. Good. I'm
sold
glad.
it to me.
It's definitely worth seeing. I mean,
yeah,
it isn't a perfect movie, but I would say, it made me realize that the nice thing that they've been able to do with Batman over the years, obviously exceptions proving the rule, is they managed to stick a lot of different actors in this role and do pretty, do justice to the character. Maybe it's a testament to how strong the character is and how anyone can dress up as Batman and do it. But also, I think it's that they've managed to make him, James Bondishly beyond the actor who plays him. So when I watch this, I think, yes, I'm okay with different people playing Batman in the latest graphic novel style movie of Batman. And if next year they want to do an Elseworlds, I'm okay with that. And if the year after they want to bring Affleck back for a Justice League movie, I'm okay with that. That these can all kind of exist, maybe in a way that we couldn't see anyone but Robert Downey Jr. playing Iron Man. We're okay with lots of Batman.
There's something to be said. Okay, there's something to be said for Marvel creating their cinematic universe, but there's also something to be said for DC looking at comics and how comics work. And as you would get a different artist on each run of the same character, they seem happy to give different artistic direction to their films at the moment. And I think that's a great way forward because it makes it feel more like the feeling that you would get from seeing a new artist's take on an old character.
No, I agree entirely. I mean, in the last 12 months, I've watched 26 of the animated DC films.
Good Lord.
The vast majority have been Batman. And they've been absolutely brilliant. I would go out on a limb to say I would take a new animated film over a new live action Batman any day of the week. Granted, that might be because they're all about 75 minutes long, not 3 hours. So, but I just love that the animated films have done exactly that. There's no overarching continuity. There's no narrative. It's, hey, here's a comic book character. We're going to stick him in a comic book story for you. And next year, there'll be a different story with a slightly different character. But this one might pop in because it doesn't matter. And I think that freedom to then do whatever they want with it I think has been what's most refreshing across those films. I mean, ironically enough, Kaz, I know you've watched a lot of the animated films. I think Batman is the one character that they don't mess with, the most. That he's basically the same Batman, no matter what crazy universe the film is in. Be it, I think it's Justice League Gods and Monsters. He's an actual vampire bat. Whether or not it's Batman Ninja, where he is an actual ninja, back in feudal Japan, or even Gotham by Gaslight, where he's probably at some point Jack the Ripper, back in Victorian London, but he's still the same Batman. But again, I think that's testament to the power of the character, but also the bravery of people to say, we're going to take this character, and he's the same character, but we're just going to really cock up the worlds he's in, stick him in this stupid world and this stupid world with this stupid character and see what happens. And to a man, they've all been brilliant. I'd take the likes of Batman Hush over it. I think stuff like that is on a par with what Nolan did, quite frankly, for the character. So
wow.
Yeah, I would be super up for if DC did that with this, a different Batman in a different story, in a different universe every year. Boom. Thanks very much. Take my money.
I would quite like to see our bats do another. I don't want to see them do the movie that they seemed to set up in.
We need another Joker movie. Ooh. That's what we need. We need another Joker movie. What we need right now is another Joker movie. In fact, no, we need two. We need one as a sequel to the Joker movie, and we need one there's a sequel to this with the Joker in it. And maybe in that Flash movie, if Batman's in that, we could have the Joker as well.
Yeah. I mean, we mock, but come on, we could be getting a Gorilla Grodd movie. So, it could be worse.
That doesn't make me want another Joker movie. No. Of any. No. It just is. It was a great thing about this was I really liked the Riddler, and they did a good job with the Riddler. They didn't. I mean, I like Jim Carrey, but he's not the Riddler. And
they turned the Riddler into just a guy, which worked for the movie. You can't turn the Joker into just a guy. I mean, you can, but they already did it. You know what I mean? There's nowhere new for that character to go.
So which is why I'd like to see him just do something completely. Well, off the walls.
There's been lots of fan speculation online, which means absolutely, naff all, about it maybe being the Court of Owls that they go for next, which I would be super interested in seeing, and carries on nicely from the type of plot that is set up in the Batman. I think that would be a great idea, and just leave the big hitters from the Rogues Gallery alone for a while. Let them rest. Specifically, the Joker. Let him rest.
They can have 1 year off, and then I want 6 Joker movies.
I want Mr. Freeze. Come on.
I still see you.
Only if he's with the Joker. The Joker plus.
Bring Arnie back for Mr. Freeze. That'd be amazing.
Oh, yes.
What's on 4K? What we got on 4K? Anyone notice that Hurt Locker? I mean, you guys probably are fully aware of this, but I found out the other day that Hurt Locker, which I really like, is on 4K in America on a Best Buy Steelbook.
Oh, okay.
Is that a way of making sure that I don't ever own it?
Yes.
Do they not want to sell this movie?
It'll get a Zavvi Steelbook over here. It will. Eventually.
I was a bit disappointed by that. I was like, have I missed this? Did this come out some other?
I don't know. It's not a title to have me falling over myself to pick up in 4K.
I agree. I'm not super desperate to see it. It's a good movie.
I'll have it. It doesn't have to be sold to the 15 people who are going to buy it in Best Buy. It's but yes. Okay. So tell me instead about let's have a look at Mark's Arrows, Kenneth Branagh's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Okay. Yes. The review's up. Read, peruse, enjoy, mock, pick holes, do what you will. But in summary, the film is as brilliantly loopy as it always was. Mulleted, shirtless, very sexy Ken Branagh Frankenstein, running around, oil wrestling, someone pretending to be Robert De Niro that just had me guffawing with laughter, considering it goes on for about 5 minutes.
I'll be the arbiter of what's sexy around here, Mark.
Well, it's that. Just watch it again. Oops, Ken Branagh's fallen over and oiled himself again. Whoops, there goes his other nipple. What? Oh, there goes his hair. Look, I mock, but it is. I think I wrote in the review that I think if Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula was a gloriously loopy redo of the Corman Price Poe type gothic horror, then this is the same kind of gloriously loopy, updated Hammer Technicolor, wants to be lush and romantic. There's some rather hammy performances, shall we say, predominantly by John Cleese's Overbite, which is the scariest thing in this film. But I love it. I think it's absolutely magnificent. For all of that, the fact that it wants to be a hardcore merchant ivory doomed period romance. Oh, but there's a fist being thrust through a chest and pulling out a beating heart. You know, it's as brilliantly gonzo as it ever was. The 4K is an interesting one, and it made me question my entire scoring ethos, as it were, to the picture score, because you watch it and it starts off with the Antarctic, and it looks pretty ropey, if I'm honest. Soft, gritty, dirty. It looks really not nice. And it's only gradually it starts to pick up that you start to see some of that good 4K goodness. You know, the real tight detail, the skin tones, textures in the dresses. Oh, but every so often it lurches into a hugely soft. The entire scene where he leases the loft looks almost 720p, let alone 4K. It looks terrible, and the film has these really high highs in terms of picture quality and really low lows. But you go back and you look at the old Blu-ray disc, and it's an absolute revelation. That is horrible in comparison. And so it got me thinking about this. The score for these discs, we shouldn't be scoring the cinematography. We're not scoring the lighting choices, the filter choices that they had, the you know, all that kind of stuff. We're to score, did they capture what was, you know, the image that was put on screen originally? Is that replicated on disc? So I fully expect when this starts to ship and people get it, I expect to be challenged on my score of 8 for the picture, because I think a lot of people will go, that's not an 8. You know, oh, it doesn't look anything like the latest China Enormo Buster, you know, with HDR to see my eyes and blacks to fall into.
It's the best that they can do with what they've got.
I genuinely think it does. And don't get me wrong, there are moments of absolute beauty, but it is, you know, he chooses to shoot it with all kinds of filters on, woozy candle light to give it that old school look. It's never gonna, you know, shred your eyeballs with detail, but I honestly think it was a really lovely upgrade and justified totally the 4K. Excuse me, the rest of it, the same soundtracks they're on previously, then they're not surround sound demos by a long way, hugely front focused, and the extras are interesting, but they're all very academic and dry look backs at it. There's virtually nothing from the key creatives. There's absolutely no input from Branagh, no input from any of the actors. I think probably symbolic of the fact that there was a huge amount of controversy at the time it was filmed. Coppola came out and disowned it. Frank Darabont, who co-wrote the script, came out and disowned it. And I think you can tell that in the extras. It's a solid package. It's not one of Arrow's more stacked extra set of supplementals. But all in all, I loved the film. I think the visual upgrade is worth it alone. So it's an absolute 2 thumbs fresh from me for this one.
Nice. Well, it's nice to be able to take an early look at some of these discs. We've still got Robocop 4K coming in a little bit early from its release in a couple of weeks' time, and shipping to us are The Witch, Second Sight's The Witch 4K.
Nice.
That is such
nice.
a tempting box set. I mean, I don't need it, but boy oh boy, when I saw that through Second Sight's Twitter feed, I was milliseconds away from by now. Well, I did not.
There is already a competition lined up to go alongside that.
Well, if I enter that, Kaz, I'm sure we can come to some sort of arrangement.
No, Tom. It's when Kaz says it's a podcast exclusive competition, he means it's only open to those who do the podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
So
sorry, Simon's not on this week.
It's down to you and me, Tom. We'll timeshare it.
Sounds good.
So we're going to get an early disc for that. So we'll take an early look. I'm pretty sure Mark's going to be taking a look at it, even though he doesn't know that. And also Sony's Spidey's No Way Home. No Way Home 4K is coming this week. So I'm going to have a look at that before its April release.
Excellent.
Yeah. So there's some good stuff coming out.
And also The Matrix.
Oh, really? I was about to go onto TV and you.
Okay, we can. But I just.
Go on.
Okay, I was just going to say, I'm not going to sit here and give an impassioned defense of Matrix Resurrections, but I'm kind of interested to see it again. I want to know how what happens on the second viewing, because I still think there's an hour of good movie in that.
I know. I agree.
Hour.
Yeah,
I agree entirely. So I'm gonna look forward to taking a second watch of that, namely for all the bits that I slept through first time around.
It feels like you're gonna have to review that one as well, Mark.
Oh, hey, come on.
Yeah, sorry, you just walked yourself right
Si's not
into
here.
that.
Si's not here. Can't we give it him?
Yes, no, I'm not anticipating that one. Maybe in a few years' time, I'll give it another shot.
I tell you what, I will have though if we get them in. That's some of these new Arrow announcements.
Oh, Enter the Void.
They appear to be going full on Gasper No Way.
Right.
Not 4K though, are they 4K?
No.
Yeah.
It's a Blu-ray collector's set.
Oh.
Yeah, but interesting that they're. I mean, I know they put out Climax, but considering Irreversibles with Powerhouse, with Indicator, now I've got the old US disc of Enter the Void, but I'll be really interested to see what Arrow do with it because it's an absolutely barking film.
It is. That's going to be one of those movies where the supplementary material is going to be as interesting as the movie.
Yes. Well, I mean, I'd argue that that's the reason why I bought the Indicator set of Irreversible.
Not to watch the film again.
Oh no, I'm going to watch it again and then watch it in chronological order.
No, you're not.
No, I'm not. No, I'm really not.
No, and it's not. Every time I think about that, I'm okay.
Yes,
that's got to be a topic for a future podcast. Is films you watch once.
Yeah, Simon did an article on that. Movies you never want to watch again. Yeah, he did a whole thing. There's a lot of films I've never watched as a result of that article.
Yeah,
so it's like,
well, there's a thread at the moment in the Blu-ray forum. Films that you know are great, but you don't want to watch again. So there's a current thread for it.
Slightly different. I can see the examples in there are like ones where there's a twist, or ones where they've got some worth to them, but you don't need to watch it again. Simon's list was specifically, once you've watched this, you're so damaged that you would never think of going back to that place again.
Once watched, all you're good for is the AV Forums podcast.
Bad movie.
Films that make you think that watching Requiem for a Dream again would be okay.
I think that was on there, I think streaming. What we've got some streaming announcements. We've got that Sebastian Stan, American Psycho S Fresh, apparently coming to Disney in like a week or two.
I just say, what a career Sebastian Stan is carving out for himself. Of the people who've been Marvelized, he has got one of the most interesting, like, parallel careers to his Marvel nonsense, I think.
His agent's playing a blinder. It's because everyone goes out. We want that guy who played Luke Skywalker. and his agent sort of intercepts the call and goes, here he is.
It looks interesting. I mean, if it is coming to Disney Star, I don't know. It seems to be that's where it's coming to. It's already out in the States, so we're not far behind. It does look interesting. Getting into some reviews, some good reviews. Less interested am I in Judd Apatow's latest, Bubble, coming to Netflix 1st of April. Not a joke.
He's trying very hard, isn't he, Apatow? And it's not really coming to much.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't remember the last time I was super excited for something from him, but there was a day. We'll see. But
It was a
Judd
Thursday.
Apatow, yeah,
it was raining.
Definitely wasn't April Fool's Day. Pixar's latest, Turning Red, coming to Disney this Friday.
Oh man, there is a member of my household who is insane for red pandas, so that is going to be a day one watch for us.
Well, I was not interested in this. I let Luca and Raya pass me by. I checked out Encanto, which was all right, and I was quite prepared to let this go. But I saw the trailer and I've read early reviews, and I'm really rather quite excited. It looks. My daughter's not getting a look in, quite frankly. I'm going to get me chocolate milk and my M&Ms and set myself in fire up the projector and away we go. So yeah, I'm excited for this one. It looks good.
You should give Luca a go, Mark. Luca
Oh,
is good.
I will do. Just like I will with Raya. But
Raya is fine.
I've got
lots of people love it, but it is an okay Disney princess movie.
I quite like that. They're both, they're both worth watching. I think, and certainly from the comfort of your own home, you can do worse than watch these films. I think they're very enjoyable. I actually would prefer to rewatch Raya than have to rewatch the much more toe-tappingly fun Encanto and come to terms with the rather disturbing underlying themes in that movie.
I have been saying this.
I know
from
you have.
day one.
Okay, yeah, I know. I hear you, Tom. I hear you. It's just I like my Disney movies. Just
have I missed this darkly psychologically twisted
undertow
that
it's
no one's watching?
This weird notion that, like, I don't know, just
there's a lot of like birthright, heritage power, like resume status quo at all costs message to it, which is a bit weird. Like it's
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the songs are great. Songs are great.
Oh boy, are they ever great.
Yeah, they are.
In a public place, I heard the soundtrack for Encanto at the weekend, and I was bopping along with it. It is brilliant soundtrack.
Yeah, it was so bad that Tom told me that he was listening to it, and I got it playing for similar reasons. So there we go. That's what we podcast guys do at the weekend.
Listen to Disney soundtracks at the weekend.
Are we going to really briefly talk about what we've been watching and the scores we've been giving them, or should we just move along?
The scores that we've been giving them. Is that
I watched the first episode of Peaky Blinders, and I'm going to come right out and say I really enjoy Peaky Blinders. I watched 4 great seasons and a very Moorish, compelling, well-acted ensemble TV, and a 5th season that went a little bit off the rails, and then a massive hiatus, and the 5th season got a lot of things wrong because it didn't feel coherent, but it could have got a lot of things right by turning out to be the first of 2 parts, which I suppose it was, because the 6th season carries straight on, but it doesn't really. It does that long old 4 years later routine, which just utterly undermines. I mean, if you imagine the gap between Infinity War and Endgame, and without spoilers for the 3 people on the planet who haven't seen Endgame, if Endgame started with 5 years later, I mean, literally started with 5 years later, I think that there would be a big discontinuity between the two. Like there is something key to make you feel like it's connected to the previous movie before you do stuff like take a leap forward. And for me, Peaky Blinders, which we've waited over 2.5 years for, season 6, final season, just didn't do it. It didn't it left a big gaping hole, and in reminiscent of reading a fellow reviewer's review of a first episode of a season this year, it proved an episode which I could have easily watched the first 5 minutes of and the last 5 minutes of and not missed a thing.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, I could have really done that, and that's such a shame because we only got 6 episodes in this final season of Peaky Blinders left, and they could have played it full Count of Monte Cristo, full revenge, but they just wasted 55 minutes of screen time.
Disappointing.
Disappointing. It really is. But you were much happier with the return of your favourite Star Trek show.
I was going to say, on this week's episode of What is Tom Crapping On Now?
Well, do you know what? I'm going to just echo what Kaz said about Peaky Blinders, which is that if you watch the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes of Picard season 2, episode 1, there's an interesting setup for a new season in there. But in between that, you have 50 minutes of remember this guy, remember this person, remember that person. And in all honesty, the answer to most of these things is no, because they had no character in the first season.
You don't remember Q? Call yourself a Trek
I'm talking about
fan?
I'm talking about
the returning characters from the first.
The returning
season,
characters.
Yes.
Elnor, Rios, Alison Pill. I can never remember Agnes.
You don't. We
Bob, Dave,
just
but
Bernard.
really.
So in a way, you can say like totally necessary to spend an hour going through like, please try and remember who these people are because they were without personality for the first season.
Yeah.
But without spoiling, the last 5 minutes renders the previous 50 minutes entirely inconsequential. And it is absolutely infuriating. But yeah, I've been getting a little bit of flack for it on the forums. Like,
well, it's a really easy way of undoing someone's opinion is to just go, well, you're not really a fan.
I have had that.
Just,
I've had
unless
you're not a
give
Star
it
Trek fan.
9.5.
Here's
out of
my
10.
Deep Space Nine baseball cap. Okay, I am a Star Trek fan.
I think it's all just a lot of pent up Jungle Cruise fans. Finally having their revenge. That's what it is.
I've had comments that I'm a clickbait merchant. And it's just not true. I just thought it was a terrible episode of television. And I will be watching the rest of it because I will update the review once the season is over, like I usually do.
We don't do half marks, Tom.
No, we don't do half.
I was going to say, but is it worth just reminding people that we do review single episodes, normally the first episode, and it is always clearly marked as the first episode.
We say clearly marked, but we say premiere.
It's French.
It is French.
Mais oui.
Yeah. I think we were reminded in one of the reviews that we should put first episode. It's a bit like when they tried to say license revoked, isn't it? As the James Bond film, and they're like, what does revoked mean?
but
I mean, license to kill.
Of course, we'd all like to review full seasons, but the idea is it often takes 6, 8, 10 weeks to get to that, and people want to know: is it worth me starting this? And so, reviewing the premiere episode is probably, I would argue, more useful than the full season.
Maybe.
But I think also, naturally, not to digress too far, but also things, streaming services like Sky don't leave the shows up there for forever. If you've got a 22 episode season on Sky, by the time you get to the end of it, if you recommend people to watch that season,
it's gone.
It's gone. so really, I mean, you get the best of both worlds here. We give you a taste of what's to come. It's nice to. I'm happy to have Peaky Blinders back. I'm disappointed that they wasted the first episode. That doesn't mean I'm not a Peaky Blinders fan. And I think people are allowed to dislike bad episodes from shows that they would like to like.
That
You know,
is
it's-
spot on. Like I will always love Star Trek, and I will always watch Star Trek, and some of that I will find terrible, and that's okay. I can still find it
Yes.
terrible and like it. You know, I still love Star Wars, despite thinking The Rise of Skywalker is kind of rubs. Like I am still a Star Wars fan, and I would still watch Rise of Skywalker again because it's a Star Wars movie, and I would probably, if I happened across an episode of Discovery on TV.
No, you
Maybe
wouldn't.
I
No,
would
you're
leave
going
it on.
too far,
Don't-
Tom.
don't go
You're
too
going
far.
Leave
too
it on.
far.
Lost all credibility with that.
But I wouldn't enjoy it. I would complain about it, but I would leave it like,
Yeah.
and that's it. I feel as a bona fide Star Trek fan, I feel entitled to say, no, this is not okay. This is
Absolutely.
bad Star Trek.
I think that's okay across the board. I think, and I think that it's actually the biggest fans who are going to be really disappointed if something isn't up to what they think it should be about.
Anyway,
Anyway,
if you liked it, go for your money. Like, go for your life.
yeah, don't give it a 9.5 out of 10, and don't leave
Seriously.
any room for anything else better in the whole of Trekdom. Do it.
Yeah. If you think it is the best thing that you have ever seen, knock yourself out. Enjoy it. It is not for me. I will watch it, but I will not enjoy it.
Here
And-
endeth the lesson.
yeah, here endeth the podcast. I think we're just about done. So yes. So thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mark.
You're very welcome.
4 out of 10.
Yes. Nice. That is it for the AV Forums podcast this week. My thanks to the hardware and the movie teams. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a like and subscribe to the channel. Please hit the notification bell so you don't miss out when we publish our live streams, product reviews, and more. And you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and bookmark avforums.com for the latest reviews, news, and videos. Plus, why not leave us a 5-star rating on whichever service you use if they allow it, but only if you enjoyed this show. I am Kazman. Thank you for watching, listening, and join us for the next podcast. Bye.